Hey listeners, it's Lindsay Smith Rogers with some exciting news and an ask for you. Public Health on Call is coming up on 1,000 episodes, and we want to hear from you. To mark this milestone, Josh Sharfstein, Stephanie Desmon, and I are answering your questions about the show. Have you ever wanted to know how we pick topics or how we prepare for interviews? Now's your opportunity to ask your question and hear your voice on the podcast. Send us your question as a voice memo to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu by October 31st. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu by October 31st. Thank you so much, and we are so excited to hear from you.
Welcome to Public Health on Call, a podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, where we bring evidence, experience, and perspective to make sense of today's leading health challenges. If you have questions or ideas for us, please send an email to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes.
It's Lindsay Smith Rogers. Today, the complex problem of food insecurity. Millions of Americans live in homes without regular access to healthy food. Stephanie Desmon talks to Dr. Maureen Black, an expert on the intersection of health and nutrition at the University of Maryland, about what rising food costs, a reduction in government food programs, and the end of a gold standard research report could mean for those who go hungry. Let's listen. Maureen Black, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm delighted to be here.
So you study the relationship between food insecurity and child health. And I want to start really easy. Tell me what food insecurity is.
Food insecurity really means an insecure access or a not consistent access to enough food to lead a healthy life. It's a fairly straightforward definition.
What have you learned about the relationship between food insecurity and child health?
Well, I can tell you I've learned a lot. At the University of Maryland, I directed a clinic for children who were not growing well. These are primarily children under age 3. And as part of that, I am part of a national group called Children's Health Watch. It includes 5 medical centers around the country. We all have these clinics where we see children who are under age 3 and not growing well. Some are food insecure, some not. But from that, we've learned a tremendous amount about food insecurity and the impact that it has on children's health and well-being. Just as a quick summary, the impact on children's health, and these are things that we've published, so we know it clinically and we know it from a research perspective, is that children are at risk, and this sounds odd, of either growing too much in terms of becoming overweight because they're having cheap food that is high in calories but low in nutrients, or they're at risk of not growing enough, and that's because they have food that doesn't have enough nutrients, but they don't have enough food either. So their growth is impacted, as is their health. We find kids who are in food insecure households are more likely to be hospitalized, to go to the emergency department. So it clearly has an impact on their health. But that's not all. It also has an impact on their behavior and on their development. And some of that is food insecurity occurs in households that are low income. And if you're food insecure, if you're a mom or a dad in a food insecure household, it is scary. And families are more likely to be anxious or depressed in terms of knowing where the next meal comes from. Well, that translates to children. So children experience the insecurity or the anxiety or the stress that their family is feeling. It doesn't just stay with the parents, so that they can feel some emotional anxiety as well. Then it impacts how kids do in school. Well, why would that be? Well, back to the illness, or also back to absences. If families are stressed, then there may be insecurities related to getting kids to school. And we see, again, these are data that show us this. Children are more absent and less likely to do well in school. And then their graduation rates, of high school and things are worse. And then, of course, there's a stigma. Kids know when their family is food insecure, and it doesn't feel good. And if others are having nice foods or healthy foods, and they aren't, it doesn't feel good. And then, of course, the cycle of poverty. So it has an enormous, enormous impact on children.
We live in one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Why do we have so much food insecurity?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. We shouldn't have so much food insecurity. And it's often related to poverty, but it's not only poverty. There's also access to healthy foods. And we have families who live in what are food deserts, meaning that there aren't supermarkets or places that sell healthy foods. And what families do when they don't have this access or the availability of healthy foods is that they cut their food budgets by buying low cost, fill 'em up kinds of foods. So, fill 'em up kinds of foods would be things like noodles that fill you up, but unless you have veggies or proteins in with them, there's like no nutrient value. So, that's a first step that they do. And a second step that they do is they just have less food. So it has to do with the finances and the access. We have programs that can help families.
Well, I'd like to ask about SNAP specifically.
Okay.
And SNAP is what we commonly call food stamps, right?
Mhm.
New budgets in Washington are threatening to cut SNAP benefits dramatically. What kind of impact that could have,
Oh,
and how many people are we talking about who might be impacted?
I mean, the number of people on SNAP is enormous, and SNAP covers people from infants through old age. So it's a very, very broad number that it's covering, and there are some estimates that 4 million people a month could be impacted by the cuts to SNAP. We have evidence on SNAP. It's a supplemental program. What it does is it provides resources for families to buy food. There's not an indication of what you have to buy, but there is something called SNAP Ed, which provides nutrition education to families. And so the evidence is that families who are eligible for SNAP and who use SNAP, their children are in better health than families who are eligible, so similar economic level, and don't access SNAP. So it's a critically important program for us. And we've also shown that when the benefits decrease, that you see more food insecurity. So they're clearly related one to the other. The investment that we make in children is that particularly young children, is that if kids have healthy growth and kids also learn what healthy foods are very early in life, that's a trajectory that stays with them. So the investment to young children during a time of early brain development and early habit formation pays off for all of us, with kids being less likely to have chronic illnesses and more likely to be able to participate in school and then contribute to the society. So it's really a very, very wise investment and a poor investment if you don't invest in it.
We're all seeing at the grocery store the rising cost of food. This also must play into the whole food insecurity situation.
Absolutely. I mean, it's challenging for all of us. And, it's not easy to sort out what is healthy food, especially if you're a family with 2 young kids. It's very hard to read all those food labels and make sure what's healthy, what's not healthy. So I mentioned SNAP Ed that tries to provide education. WIC provides education. And we also provide information for families to make healthy decisions because it's challenging. The decision that we say is hug the perimeter. So if you buy, that means that if you stay away from ultra-processed foods, and hug the perimeter means that you're more likely for the fresh things and all the way around. Now, that's not the only thing you do, but you think about trying to stay away from those ultra-processed things that may be high in calories but low in nutrients.
Perimeter, you mean of the grocery store?
Of the grocery store, sorry, yes. Of the grocery store, yeah.
A recent report said that 47.4 million people lived in food insecure homes, and that is a report that's done by the USDA. Can you talk to me about the Household Food Security Report, what it gives us, and what might be happening to it?
This is an annual report by the U.S. Department of Agriculture by USDA. That was started about 30 years ago during the Clinton administration. It's a nationally representative report, meaning that they sample families in every state and in every socioeconomic group. And the key thing is that they focus on children as well as adults. Basically, probably the only national one that really includes children. So what they do is every year they provide a report on food insecurity. That's actually food security, and then it's broken down into levels. So it's like a report card. It tells us how we're doing. And we who work in this area look forward to its release. In fact, the very last one was on October 22nd, and that will cover 2024. So it's a very important report, and I can tell you some of the ways that it's used. So states use it to look at how they compare with other states and then can do what we call data-driven decisions. So they can make decisions about their investment in safety net programs like SNAP or WIC, whether the state is adding to it or altering their eligibility, and they can track what's happened over time. So every state can do that, and you can do that as a country as a whole because we trust the data. It's done in a rigorous manner. It represents all of us. So it's a very helpful report. When we mention SNAP and WIC, we can evaluate how the SNAP program is doing or how the WIC program is doing by looking at the changes in food insecurity. So it's accountability. And the accountability is critical to make sure that the programs that we're investing in, are they giving us what we want? And what we want is lower rates of food insecurity. So are they working? So they're critical for that reason.
And you mentioned this was the very last report coming out.
Oh.
I saw that the Trump administration called this report redundant, costly, politicized, and extraneous. So they are ending this report. I imagine you disagree with that assessment.
You know, I cannot understand how they can come up with those 4 words. If it's redundant, what is it redundant of? If it is political, well, it's been, I said, in place for 30 years through Republican administrations, through Democratic administrations. You know, when we're thinking about hunger, we're not thinking about, is this a Republican or is this a Democrat? Absolutely. We're thinking about these are people who are hungry. And in the U.S., the wealthiest country in the world, we shouldn't have people who are hungry. It's very hard to say that any one of those words, extraneous to what? It's very hard to think how any one of those words would apply. And the issue is, if we don't have it, then we don't have legitimate ways to make decisions about things. We can't measure how our programs are doing. And, you know, in the end, who that will hurt? That will hurt the most vulnerable people in our society because we cannot assure, we cannot tell whether they are doing all right or we need to put in more resources. And who are the most vulnerable people? Well, they're people with young children who typically have fewer resources than the people without children. So there's single parents who are vulnerable, and there's some minorities who are vulnerable. Many of these people are vulnerable for a period of time, not necessarily forever, but it will ultimately hurt those people. And if we don't have it, the risk is that we'll rely on less rigorous data because to regenerate it or to replicate it could be quite costly and could be quite challenging. So it doesn't make sense that we would eliminate this valuable data.
Maureen Black, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
Public Health on Call is a podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, produced by Joshua Sharfstein, Lindsay Smith-Rogers, and Stephanie Desmon. Audio production by J.B. Arbogast, Michael Bonfils, Spencer Greer, Matthew Martin, and Philip Porter, with support from Chip Hickey. Distribution by Nick Moran. Production coordination by Catherine Ricardo. Analytics by Elisa Rosen. If you have questions or ideas for us, please send an email to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes. Thank you for listening.